Hi, I'm Daniel, and I didn't see it coming. It was a Tuesday night, quiet, ordinary, and boring in the way that only long-term marriages can be. I was reheating leftover lasagna, the kind we used to make together but now just sat on the counter in a plastic container I couldn't remember buying. She was scrolling on her phone across the room, legs crossed neatly, her face lit by that cold screen glow. And then, without looking up, she said it. "I'm not attracted to you anymore." Just like that. No build-up, no warning, not even a sigh or a pause to soften the blow. I turned off the microwave. The hum of the motor stopped. Everything else, inside me, kept spinning. "What?" I asked, unsure I'd heard her right. I think we need space. I don't feel the, same anymore. "It's not you. It's me," she added, already on autopilot, like she'd rehearsed it. I stood there holding a plastic fork in one hand, the beeping of the microwave long since forgotten. "Where is this coming from?" She finally looked up. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even sad. They were just tired, distant, maybe even bored. "I don't know, Daniel. I think I just need to figure out who I am. You know?" I didn't know. I had no idea what that even meant. We'd been married 7 years. We shared a mortgage, a dog, a garden we both hated weeding. I thought we were boring maybe, but steady, safe. She got up, walked past me, and patted my shoulder like I was a child who didn't make the team. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because she asked me to, but because I didn't want to hear her breathing next to me, not knowing what it meant anymore. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting every crack in the plaster like it would make the ache stop. I didn't cry, not yet. I just felt numb. Like someone had unplugged the electricity in my chest and I was still waiting for the spark to come back. The next morning, she made coffee like nothing had changed. Said she was going to spend a weekend with her sister to clear her head. I nodded. My mouth didn't work right anymore. My body moved, but it felt like I was dragging someone else's limbs. By Friday, she was gone. And I was alone in the house we picked together, surrounded by the scent of her perfume and the ghost of promises that now felt like cruel jokes. I packed a suitcase that night, just the essentials. A couple shirts, jeans, toothbrush, no photos. I didn't want reminders. I booked a short-term rental across town, a single-bedroom unit with a couch older than our marriage. I didn't even tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends. I didn't want pity. I just wanted to breathe, and I did. Alone in that empty apartment, I stood in front of a full-length mirror I'd never noticed before, and I hated what I saw. Not because I was ugly or fat or broken, but because I looked like someone who had disappeared while trying to make someone else happy. My shoulders slumped. My stomach stuck out just enough to make me frown. My eyes were dull. My posture collapsed. I didn't look like a man who had been left. I looked like a man who had left himself years ago. I sat on the edge of the bed that night and stared at my phone. I almost called her, just to ask why again, just to make sense of it, but I didn't. Instead, I opened my browser, searched, personal trainer near me. That one decision, made at 2:12 a.m. in a tiny apartment filled with silence and shame, would change my life. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet, but because I knew, finally, that no one was coming to save me, so I had to save myself. The apartment was cold in the mornings, old radiators that hissed more than they heated. There was no dining table, just a counter with one stool. No framed photos, no soft lighting, no scent of candles or her shampoo. Just me, a half-unpacked suitcase, and the unsettling sound of nothing. At first, I kept the TV on all night just so it didn't feel so quiet. I ordered takeout for every meal, burgers, pizza, whatever I could eat without thinking. I stopped shaving. I barely showered. Days blended into each other, indistinguishable and dull. It's funny how quickly the absence of love reveals what little we've done for ourselves. I realized that so much of my routine had revolved around her. Grocery shopping was for her preferences, workout plans, non-existent. My closet, full of clothes she picked out because you look better in cool tones. I had lost track of who I was somewhere between her approval and my silence. One night, I caught my reflection again in that mirror, the one next to the door I avoided. I had just stepped out of the shower. Steam clung to the glass, but what I saw underneath made me freeze. I looked defeated. It wasn't just the belly or the sunken eyes. It was the way I was standing, shoulders hunched, head slightly bowed, like I was apologizing to the world for existing. That's when it hit me. She didn't stop being attracted to me overnight. This wasn't about a new guy or a sudden shift. This was years of erosion, years of me slowly shrinking, letting myself disappear. I had become invisible, even to myself, and I hated that. So I sat down, dripping water onto the hardwood floor, opened my phone and clicked on one of the search results I had bookmarked. Coach Nate, veteran fitness for men 30 plus. I sent a message, brief, honest. Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm 37, recently separated, out of shape, mentally drained. I need help. He responded the next morning. Come in today at 5. First session's on me. Wear what you've got. Let's get to work. That evening, I showed up in a wrinkled tee, old sneakers, and shorts that barely fit. The gym was small but clean, hard. Floors, iron bars, no fluff, no mood lighting. Just real work. And Coach Nate was every bit the ex-Marine I expected. Tight crew cut, muscles carved out of discipline. But he didn't judge, didn't smirk. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, and said, "You ready to take your life back, or just here to complain?" That punch of bluntness was exactly what I needed. The first workout nearly killed me. 10 minutes in, and I was drenched, gasping, feeling every single second of the past few years when I let myself go. He didn't go easy on me. When I bent over to catch my breath, he said, "Get up. You've been on the floor long enough." Something about that line stuck with me, because it wasn't just about burpees or squats. It was about everything. The marriage, the neglect, the numbness. I'd been emotionally on the floor for years, and no one, not even me, had told me to. Get up. Over the next few weeks, I showed up every day, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. The soreness became addictive. I started drinking more water, cutting back on sugar, sleeping deeper. I still didn't tell anyone what was going on. I didn't need validation. I needed evolution. Coach Nate gave me a simple mantra during one of our grueling sessions. Pain is just weakness leaving the body. But to me, that pain wasn't just physical. It was the ache of every overlooked dinner, every one-sided conversation, every time I laughed too hard at a joke I didn't think was funny just to keep peace. The soreness in my legs. It was also the resentment I'd swallowed. The burn in my shoulders. Years of carrying someone else's needs while ignoring my own. This wasn't about muscles. This was about rebuilding a man who'd been slowly disassembled by compromise. And even though I didn't know it then, I had just begun becoming someone she wouldn't recognize anymore, not out of spite, but because I was finally becoming someone I recognized again. The third week nearly broke me. Coach Nate had me doing something called death circuits, a brutal combination of push-ups, kettlebell, swings and sprints on the treadmill with barely a minute to breathe in between. I felt every cell in my body screaming. Halfway through, I had to run to the bathroom and throw up. Twice. When I came back out, pale and shaking, I expected sympathy, or at least a break. Instead, Nate handed me a cold towel, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "You can quit right now, or you can finish weaker than you'll ever be again." I wiped my face, stared at the weights, and finished the set. I don't remember how I got through it, but I did. And when I collapsed on the mat afterward, sweat dripping into my eyes, chest heaving, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Pride, the kind that doesn't need an audience, the kind that builds from the inside, quietly, like a fire starting to flicker after a long winter. That night, I limped home and stood shirtless in front of the mirror. No six-pack, not even close. But something had changed. My posture, the set of my jaw, the way my eyes met their own reflection again. I took a picture. First one in months. No filter. No smile. Just me. Raw, real, and fighting. something had shifted internally too. I stopped waiting for her to text, stopped checking her Instagram to see where she was, who she was with, what caption she used. I stopped caring about the space she said she needed. Instead, I filled mine. I started waking up at 6 a.m. even on Sundays. I learned how to cook again. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken, eggs, vegetables. I didn't do it for health trends. I did it because I liked the control. I liked knowing what I was putting into my body. I picked up an old guitar I hadn't touched in years. My fingers ached like hell, but I remembered chords by muscle memory. It made me feel connected. Not to her, to me. A few weeks later, I bumped into an old friend from college at a coffee shop. She stared at me for a second before saying, "Whoa, you look different." It wasn't a compliment on weight. It was something deeper. "You just seem more alive," she said. That line stayed with me because I was alive again, not for revenge, not for her approval, but for the guy I used to be before life got small, before I got too comfortable shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. One night, after a long workout and a cold shower, I sat on the balcony of that little apartment, looking out at the city lights. I sipped hot tea, listened to a playlist I made for myself, and just breathed. That's when I realized I hadn't thought about her in days, not with bitterness, not with hope. Just nothing. She was becoming a chapter, one I had finished rereading, one that no longer needed edits or underlining. And then something unexpected happened. Coach Nate, who rarely talked about anything but reps and macros, introduced me to someone after a session. "Daniel," he said, "this is Chloe. She's a friend. You two might hit it off." She wasn't flashy. She didn't wear heavy makeup or carry herself like she needed attention. She had this ease to her, an openness I hadn't seen in a long time. We talked for 20 minutes, then an hour, then over coffee, then again 2 days later. It was the first time in years I laughed without faking it. The first time someone asked me questions and listened to the answers like they mattered. And slowly, something inside me began to stretch. Something I thought had died. Not love, not yet, but possibility. And that was more than enough to keep going. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the night I stood in front of the mirror, disgusted, broken, and ready to disappear. Now I could run 3 miles without stopping. Now I looked forward to my alarm clock because it meant another chance to push myself. Now, when I caught a glimpse of myself in passing reflections, store windows, elevator doors, I saw someone I respected again. I started noticing small things. How my shirt didn't cling to my stomach anymore. How people in meetings gave me longer looks. How strangers didn't talk over me as much. It wasn't about the muscles or the weight loss. It was something else, a confidence I hadn't worn in years. My mom called me one day and said, "You sound different, lighter, happier." She didn't even know what had happened. I hadn't told her about the separation, not yet. I didn't want to talk about my marriage. I wanted to focus on becoming someone who didn't need to explain himself all the time. Chloe became a regular part of my life. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnetic in a way that didn't suck attention but invited comfort. We weren't rushing anything. But there was something there, undeniable. The way she laughed at my stories. The way she challenged me to try new things without making me feel judged. She worked as a freelance model, editorial, fitness, even a couple local brand shoots. But she was more interested in photography than being in front of the camera. One afternoon, I helped her set up a backdrop for a home shoot. I joked that she could do a before and after campaign on me. She grinned and said, "Honestly, you'd break the internet." I laughed, but I felt something flicker because she didn't say it like she was trying to flatter me. She said it like she meant it. That night we went out to dinner, nothing fancy, just tacos and sparkling water at a little rooftop bar. We talked about everything. I told her about my guitar, my job, my past, almost all of it. Not my wife. Not yet, because Chloe wasn't the rebound. She was the rediscovery. The next day, I opened my closet and realized most of my clothes didn't fit anymore. The jeans sagged. The old hoodies made me look like I was hiding, so I donated half of it. Walked into a store I used to avoid because I was too embarrassed. The sales guy took one look at me and said, "We can build you a whole new wardrobe, man. You've got the frame for it." That stuck with me too. You've got the frame for it. He meant physical shape, sure, but I heard more than that. I had the frame for a new life. One I had built from the wreckage of the old one. One where I didn't need to seek permission to feel good in my skin. One afternoon, Nate pulled me aside after a workout. "You ever thought about becoming a trainer?" he asked. "You've got the discipline and the story." That sentence did something to me. He didn't say you've got the body. He said you've got the story, because that's what mattered more. Not how I looked, but how far I'd come, what I'd fought through, what I'd survived. That same week, Chloe invited me to a high-end networking party she was attending. Fashion reps, models, fitness pros, media people. I hesitated at first. Crowds weren't my thing anymore. Especially now that I was still figuring out this new version of me, but something in me whispered, go, not to show off, to show up, for myself. I bought a tailored navy suit, nothing flashy, just sharp, clean, modern. When I tried it on, the tailor said, "Fits like it was made for you." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I wasn't walking into that party to prove anything. But fate, it turns out, had other plans. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone else had been invited to that party too. Someone who hadn't seen this version of me yet. Someone who still pictured me as the man in wrinkled t-shirts and tired eyes. My wife. And that night, everything was about to come full circle. The party was held at a private rooftop lounge downtown. You know the kind? Velvet rope, soft jazz playing beneath the hum of wealthy conversation, and a view of the skyline that made you forget everything below it. It was the kind of place I used to walk past without ever imagining myself inside. But that night, I walked in like I belonged. Chloe was by my side, wearing a sleek black dress with low heels and a warm smile that made people gravitate toward her without even realizing they were doing it. She introduced me to everyone as Daniel, someone you'll definitely be hearing more about soon. Every time someone asked what I didn't stutter. I said, "I'm a wellness coach in training, specializing in physical and emotional transformation." No one laughed. No one scoffed. They just nodded, because I looked the part now, and more importantly, I felt the part. We moved from circle to circle, sipping mocktails, laughing at bad elevator pitches, exchanging cards. The conversations were light, effortless. But beneath it all, I had this faint buzz in the back of my mind, an alert, a static hum I couldn't shake, and then I heard her laugh. It wasn't loud, but I knew it instantly. I turned my head, and there she was, my wife. Technically, still my wife. We hadn't signed anything yet. We hadn't even fought. We just split, quietly, neatly, like we were packing up a project that never launched. She was standing across the rooftop near the bar with two friends from her job. Hairstyled, makeup flawless, designer dress hugging the curves I used to trace in the dark. But her eyes, they darted, unsure, nervous. She hadn't seen me yet. Chloe noticed my shift in energy before I even said anything. "You okay?" she asked softly, her hand brushing mine. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. "Yeah, just someone from the past." She followed my gaze. "An ex?" I nodded. She smiled gently, leaned in, and whispered, "Then let's make sure she knows." Exactly what she gave up. That made me chuckle. Low, genuine, grounding. We kept mingling. I stayed close to Chloe, listened intently, contributed when needed. But my ex had seen us now. Her eyes locked with mine across the crowd, and I swear to you, she froze. She didn't blink, didn't speak. She just stumbled. Literally took one step back and had to grab the edge of a table to steady herself. Her friends turned to look at her, confused. One of them whispered something, but she waved them off, trying to compose herself. Then she started walking toward us, each step hesitant, her face betraying emotions she probably hadn't expected to feel. Shock, maybe a little jealousy, definitely regret. I stood still. I didn't fidget, didn't flinch, just looked her in the eyes as she approached, then said calmly, "Hi, Alyssa." She blinked, lips parting like she was searching for the right tone. "Daniel, I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah," I said. "Life's full of surprises." Her eyes darted to Chloe. I could see her brain scrambling to place her, to minimize her. But Chloe just smiled politely, leaned in, and offered her hand. "Hi, I'm Chloe. Daniel's +1. +1. That stung her. I saw it. Alyssa's face tightened slightly like she was holding back a question she didn't want the answer to. "Well, it's good to see you," she said quietly. "You look really good." I nodded. "Thanks. You too." Silence stretched between us for a beat too long. Then I turned to Chloe and said, "Want to grab a drink?" She smiled. "Sure." We walked away. I didn't look back. Not out of cruelty, out of peace. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the man left behind. I felt like the man who had finally caught up to his future. We didn't go far, just a few steps to the bar, but I could feel her eyes still burning into my back. Alyssa wasn't just surprised, she was unraveling. Chloe ordered us 2 drinks. As we waited, she looked at me and said, "She's still watching." I gave a small laugh. Let her. And I meant it, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about showing off or making her jealous. It was about finally standing in my own skin, shoulders up, eyes forward, and not needing anyone's approval to feel whole. But still, I turned, just once. And what I saw? Alyssa, my wife, standing alone now, her friends gone, fiddling with the clasp of her clutch like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. Her makeup was still flawless, but her posture had collapsed. She wasn't the confident woman who had told me she needed space. She looked small, like the room had suddenly gotten too loud for her. She walked toward the far corner of the rooftop, her stilettos catching slightly on the uneven wood planks. A waiter brushed past her and she flinched, stumbling sideways into a chair. People noticed. She wasn't used to that. I watched as she sank down slowly into the seat, staring at the floor, arms crossed tightly across her chest. And it hit me then. This was her collapse. Not physical, but emotional. The moment where everything she thought she'd escaped came rushing back. Not because I had hurt her, not because I had changed to spite her, but because I had outgrown the version of me she thought she could leave behind forever. 6 months ago, I would have rushed over, asked if she was okay, tried to smooth the awkwardness, shoulder her shame, offer comfort even when I was the one in pain. But that man, the man who begged for scraps, was gone. Now I stood beside a woman who chose me without needing to fix me. Now, I had nothing to prove to the person who once looked at me and saw someone unworthy of desire. As Chloe handed me my drink, she leaned against the railing and asked gently, "What happened between you two?" I took a slow sip before answering. She told me one day she wasn't attracted to me anymore, said she needed space, so I gave it to her. Chloe didn't press. She just nodded, then looked out at the skyline. "You know what I see?" she asked. "What?" She pointed to the lit-up high-rises, the endless flickers of traffic below. "I see a man who walked into this party like he belonged. Who didn't need noise to be noticed. Who didn't flinch when the past showed up. That's the man I'm standing next to, and honestly," she turned to face me, "he's damn attractive." I felt my throat tighten, not because of the compliment, but because I believed her. Because for the first time in years, I felt attractive. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Whole. Alyssa didn't leave the party right away. She sat in that corner for a while, pretending to text, nursing one drink for what felt like an hour. I caught her glancing our way twice, 3 times maybe, and each time her expression deepened. a little more regret, a little more realization. She never approached again. She didn't have to, because the truth was already written across her face. She didn't expect me to rise. She expected me to wait, to break, to quietly fade in the background while she went on, to live her version of freedom. Instead, I rebuilt. I transformed. I showed up in a room she thought I'd never belong in. Stronger, better, and no longer hers to judge. And as the music swelled and the sky darkened above us, I stood on that rooftop, not as the man who'd been left behind, but as the man who finally left her behind. We left the party just after midnight. Chloe's heels dangled from her fingers as we walked barefoot to the car, laughing about a guy who tried to pitch her a protein water brand named Brohydrate. I hadn't laughed that hard in months, deep belly laughter that made my chest shake, but when we got home I saw it, a message. From her, Alyssa. You looked amazing tonight. I had no idea you were doing so well. Maybe we could grab coffee? Just to talk. No apology. No mention of what she did. Just that shallow curiosity people get when they realize the door they walked out of leads somewhere better than they expected. I stared at the screen for a long time. Old me would have answered. Old me would have seen that message as hope. But the man I was now, he read between the lines. She didn't miss me. She missed the control. She missed the version of me that made her feel needed. And now, I had something she never expected. Peace, confidence, forward momentum. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the nightstand. No response. No second thoughts. In the morning, I blocked her number, not in anger, in closure, because I didn't owe her anything anymore. Not attention, not forgiveness, not even a memory. She had made her choice, and I had built my life in the space she left behind. 3 months passed. The seasons shifted. The rooftop party became just another memory. And my life, it kept blooming. Coach Nate offered me a part-time mentorship. I started helping other men like me, guys who were left behind, who didn't know where to begin again. I wasn't just building muscle anymore. I was building purpose. I launched a small online community, rebuilt from rock bottom. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. It mattered. And Chloe, she was still by my side, still laughing at my terrible jokes, still calling me out when I tried to hide behind silence, still reminding me every day what it felt like to be chosen, not just tolerated. One afternoon we were sitting in a sunlit cafe when a mutual acquaintance walked in. Someone who used to know both Alyssa and me. He looked shocked when he saw me. Man, he said, I almost didn't recognize you. You look like you're living your best life. I smiled. Because I am. He hesitated, then added, Alyssa, she's not doing great. Word is, she's been saying she regrets everything. I stirred. My coffee nodded and said only this. Some lessons come with a receipt, and hers is still printing. We paid the bill, walked out hand in hand, and as we stepped into the golden light of the afternoon, I felt something shift inside me. Not vengeance, not pride, but peace. I had climbed out of the ruins of a marriage that died from indifference. And I didn't just survive it, I evolved through it, the final image in my mind. Alyssa sitting alone in that chair on the rooftop, watching me disappear into the crowd with a woman who saw my worth long before she asked about my past. She stumbled that night not because she lost me, but because she realized I was never coming back, and that smile on my face as I walked away, it wasn't for her, it was for me.